The crystalline spires of Lumora gleamed in the twin suns' light, their surfaces reflecting prisms across the ancient city. Princess Nyla stood at her chamber window, her purple skin catching the light as she watched merchants and citizens move through the plaza below. Her four-fingered hand traced patterns on the cool glass, leaving faint marks that quickly faded, much like her hopes for a life of her own choosing. "Your Highness," the voice of her advisor, Varen, pulled her from her thoughts. "The Council awaits your decision on the Solari Alliance." Nyla turned, her silver eyes narrowing slightly. The delicate crown of luminescent flowers adorning her head seemed to dim, reflecting her mood. "My decision remains unchanged. I will not bind myself to Prince Doran merely to secure mining rights." Varen's gray face creased with concern. "The Council grows impatient. Without the Alliance, the Eastern Territories." "We'll find other solutions," Nyla interrupted, her voice firm despite the weight pressing down on her shoulders. "I understand my duty to Lumora, but there must be another way." As Varen departed with a respectful bow, Nyla sank onto her cushioned bench, mind racing. 6 cycles had passed since her father's passing, leaving her to navigate the treacherous waters of Lumoran politics alone. The Council, comprised mostly of elders who had served her father, pushed relentlessly for her to secure her position through marriage. Prince Doran of the Solari was their favored choice, a match that would solidify Lumora's access to precious crystals needed for their technology. But Nyla had met Doran once, and the memory still made her skin crawl. His wandering eyes and condescending tone had revealed all she needed to know about life as his mate. A plan had been forming in her mind for days, desperate perhaps, but possibly her only option. If she could present herself as already committed to another, the pressure for the Solari Alliance might ease, giving her time to establish diplomatic alternatives. She needed someone unconnected to court politics, someone who could play the role convincingly yet remain detached, someone with nothing to gain from betraying her. "Fetch Myra," she called to her attendant. Within moments, her most trusted friend appeared, her green-tinted skin glowing with health. "You called Nyla?" Myra asked, dispensing with formalities in private. "I need you to bring me information on someone," Nyla said, rising to her feet. "The blue-skinned warrior who arrived last moon cycle, the one they call the Midnight Blade." Myra's eyes widened. "Terk, he's a mercenary from the Outer Realms. They say he fought in the Void Wars." "Perfect," Nyla said, her mind made up. "Arrange a private meeting, tell no one." Terk sharpened his blade in the dim light of his rented quarters, the rhythmic sound of stone against metal a meditation that calmed his restless mind. His azure skin, marked with the phosphorescent patterns of his people, seemed to absorb the shadows around him. 3 moons had passed since he'd arrived in Lumora, seeking nothing more than anonymity and whatever work would fill his purse. The wealthy city-state offered plenty of opportunities for someone with his skills, though most were beneath a warrior who had once commanded his own battalion. A soft knock at his door broke his concentration. Hand on his blade, he approached cautiously. "Who seeks me?" "A messenger from the palace," came the reply, soft yet urgent. Terk opened the door to find a green-skinned woman with intelligent eyes. "The princess requests your presence, immediately and discreetly." His suspicion must have shown, for the woman added, "She offers this as assurance of her intentions." She handed him a small crystal, pulsing with light, a royal token worth more than he'd earn in a year. Curiosity piqued, Terk gathered his weapons. "Lead on." The palace corridors were deserted as Myra led him through hidden passages. They emerged into a garden chamber where moonlight filtered through crystal panels, illuminating a solitary figure. Princess Nyla turned as they entered, and Terk was struck by her presence. Unlike the gaudy nobility he'd encountered in his travels, she carried herself with a quiet dignity. Her purple skin seemed to shimmer with an inner light, the royal markings on her face subtle yet unmistakable. "Leave us," she commanded, and Myra departed with a concerned glance. "Your Highness," Terk bowed slightly, the gesture more habit than deference. "I'm curious what business a princess has with a blade for hire." "I need more than a blade," Nyla replied, studying him carefully. "I need a mate." Terk's eyes narrowed. "I think you've summoned the wrong mercenary." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "Not a true mate, a pretend one, someone to stand beside me publicly for 1 cycle of the moons to help me avoid an unwanted political alliance." "And why would I agree to such an arrangement?" he asked, though he could already guess. Compensation, of course. She gestured to a small chest on a nearby table. Enough to start a new life anywhere in the Seven Realms, plus immunity for any past indiscretions. Tarek tensed. You've been investigating me. Thoroughly, she admitted. Your reputation on the battlefield is impressive, your discretion afterward even more so. He moved to the window, looking out at the city below. And what would this arrangement require? Public appearances, learning enough about me to be convincing, staying in the palace where you would be treated as my chosen consort. She paused. Nothing physical would be expected. Terk laughed, a short, harsh sound. The council would never believe a princess chose an outer realm mercenary. Which makes it perfect, she countered. They'll assume I'm rebelling, making a poor choice based on infatuation, but they cannot question my right to choose. He turned to face her fully, nodding the determination in her silver eyes. One cycle of the moons. Yes, by then, I'll have secured alternative diplomatic solutions. He should refuse. Palace life, politics, pretending to be something he wasn't. It went against everything he'd sought in coming to Lumora. Yet the chest of crystals offered freedom he hadn't known in years. And something in her eyes, a loneliness he recognized all too well, stirred something he thought long buried. I have conditions, he said finally. I keep my weapons, I come and go as I please, and if danger threatens you, I respond as I see fit, regardless of protocol. Agreed. She extended her hand, palm upward in the traditional Lumoran gesture. After a moment's hesitation, Terk placed his blue hand atop her purple one. Then we have a deal, princess. Nyla, she corrected. If you're to be my mate, you should use my name. Nyla, he repeated, the name feeling strange on his tongue. Neither could have known, as they sealed their arrangement, how this business transaction would transform them both, or how the line between pretense and reality would soon begin to blur. Within days, the palace buzzed with news of Princess Nyla's chosen consort, an azure-skinned warrior from the outer realms. Council members protested vehemently, exactly as Nyla had predicted. Yet as the daughter of the former king, her right to choose remained sacrosanct. Terk found himself thrust into a world of luxury and intrigue, for which his battlefield experience had poorly prepared him. The royal tailors draped his muscular form in fabrics finer than anything he'd worn, while tutors attempted to instruct him in court etiquette. Back straight, Nyla murmured as they walked the grand corridor together, palace staff bowing as they passed. And try to look at me as though you're captivated, not planning an escape route. I am planning an escape route, he replied quietly, causing her to stifle a laugh. It's habit. Well, develop new habits. Tonight is the Lumination Festival. The entire court will be watching us. As darkness fell, the palace transformed. Crystal lanterns illuminated pathways with ethereal light, and the central courtyard filled with nobility in their finest attire. Terk stood beside Nyla on the dais, uncomfortable under the scrutiny of hundreds of eyes. They're starring, he whispered. Of course they are, she replied, a practiced smile on her face. You're the mysterious warrior who captured the heart of their princess. She slipped her hand into his. Now capture it. With that cryptic instruction, she led him to the center of the courtyard as the music began, a traditional dance to honor the joining of souls. Terk had learned the steps, but theory failed him as Nyla moved with fluid grace. Follow my lead, she said softly, guiding him through the movements. Trust me. Something in her voice reached him, and he surrendered to her guidance. Their bodies moved in synchrony, the gap between them narrowing with each turn. The watching crowd faded from his awareness as he focused solely on the woman before him, her silver eyes holding his gaze, her purple skin luminescent in the cry. The grand ballroom of the Azurean Palace gleamed with ethereal light, crystal chandeliers refracting the glow of 1,000 bioluminescent flowers that adorned the walls. Nobility from across the planetary system mingled beneath vaulted ceilings that displayed a perfect holographic recreation of the night sky above, stars and nebulae swirling in celestial dance. In the center of it all stood Talrin, uncomfortably aware of every eye that turned his way. His formal attire, a midnight blue ceremonial suit with silver embroidery, felt stifling compared to the battle armor he was accustomed to. The weight of the royal crest pinned to his chest served as a constant reminder of the charade he had agreed to maintain. You're supposed to smile, Princess Nevia whispered, her arm delicately looped through his. This is a celebration of our union, not a funeral procession. Talrin forced his lips into what he hoped resembled a smile. I'm more comfortable in combat situations than social ones, he muttered back. At least in battle, I know who the enemy is. Here, everyone is potentially an adversary, Nevia replied, her own smile never faltering as she nodded graciously to passing dignitaries. The difference is they attack with words instead of weapons. It had been 14 days since their hasty marriage. A private ceremony attended only by essential witnesses and Nevia's ailing father, King Orinus. The old king, his blue skin now pale and faded with illness, had accepted the union with surprising ease, perhaps too weakened by his condition to question the sudden appearance of a Viridian mercenary in his daughter's life. The court, however, was less accepting. Whispers followed them everywhere, speculation about Talrin's past, doubts about his worthiness to stand beside their princess, suspicions about the convenient timing of their relationship. Counselor Drevis approaches, Nevia warned under her breath. He's been my father's most trusted advisor for decades. Be careful what you say. A tall, thin Azurelian with deep navy skin and piercing silver eyes glided toward them, his ornate robes sweeping the polished floor. Princess Nevia, he greeted with a formal bow. And, Consort Talrin, how good of you to grace us with your presence. The emphasis on Talrin's title carried unmistakable disdain. Counselor, Nevia acknowledged warmly. I was just telling my husband about your remarkable service to the crown. 40 years, is it not? 43, Your Highness, Drevis corrected, his gaze shifting to Talrin. I've served Azurelia through wars, plagues, and diplomatic crises. One develops a certain intuition about threats to the realm. Talrin met the counselor's stare without flinching. Then we share something in common, counselor. Recognizing threats quickly is what kept me alive on the battlefield. Indeed, Drevis said coldly, though I wonder what threats you perceive here in the heart of our peaceful kingdom. Peace is often just the quiet before conflict, Talrin replied evenly. Something I'm sure a man of your experience understands. A tense silence fell between them until Nevia intervened. My husband's protective nature is one of his most endearing qualities, counselor. Now, if you'll excuse us, I believe the ambassador from Saravine wishes to offer his congratulations. As they moved away, Talrin felt Nevia's hand tighten on his arm. Was antagonizing my father's most powerful advisor part of our agreement? She asked, her voice tight despite her continued smile. He was testing me, Talrin defended. Men like him respect strength, not submission. This isn't a battlefield, Talrin. It's a dance, one with steps you need to learn quickly. The evening continued in similar fashion, moments of tension interspersed with carefully crafted pleasantries. By the time they retired to their shared royal chambers, connected by a discreet door to separate sleeping quarters, both were exhausted from the performance. That went better than expected, Nevia sighed, removing her elaborate headdress and placing it on a crystalline stand. Talrin raised an eyebrow as he unfastened the formal collar that had been choking him all evening. If that was better than expected, I'd hate to see what you consider a disaster. A soft laugh escaped her lips, a genuine sound quite different from the practiced, polite chuckle she had employed throughout the evening. It caught Talrin by surprise, and he found himself smiling in response. Tomorrow will be easier, she assured him. Just a meeting with the Economic Council, then a tour of the city's lower districts. The lower districts, Talrin's interest piqued. That seems unusually common for royalty. Nevia's expression softened. My people aren't just those who wear fine clothes and attend royal functions. The workers, the merchants, the ordinary citizens, they matter just as much. She paused, studying him. Does that surprise you? Honestly, yes. Talrin settled into a chair, stretching his long legs. Most rulers I've encountered view their subjects as resources, not people. Then you've known poor rulers, she replied simply. Now get some rest, we begin at dawn. The following days fell into an unexpected rhythm. Mornings were filled with royal duties, meetings, audiences, ceremonial appearances, where Talrin played his part with increasing confidence. Nevia was patient, guiding him through the intricacies of court protocol and politics with subtle gestures and whispered instructions. Afternoons often took them beyond the palace walls. To Talrin's continuing surprise, Nevia seemed genuinely invested in her people's welfare. She listened to their concerns, inspected infrastructure projects, and even mediated disputes with a wisdom that belied her years. On the fifth day of such visits, they found themselves in a small marketplace where vendors sold everything from exotic fruits to handcrafted jewelry. Nevia moved among the stalls like any ordinary citizen, her royal guards maintaining a respectful distance. "Try this," she insisted, offering Talrin a piece of star fruit with purple flesh that sparkled like the night sky. "It grows only in the volcanic regions of Western Azurelia." As he bit into the fruit, an explosion of sweet, tangy flavor filled his mouth. "That's incredible," he admitted. Nevia smiled, pleased by his reaction. "There's a saying here, to know Azurelia, one must taste its fruits, feel its winds, and dance to its music." "I've managed 1 out of 3 so far," Talrin noted dryly. A child's voice interrupted their moment. "Princess, princess." A small Azurean girl with brilliant turquoise skin rushed toward them, clutching a woven bracelet in her tiny hands. 2 worried parents hurried after her, attempting to call her back. Nevia knelt to the child's level, unmindful of her elegant robes touching the dusty ground. "Hello there, little one. What's your name?" "Lina," the girl replied, momentarily shy before regaining her courage. "I made this for you and your new husband." She thrust the bracelet forward, a simple thing made of colored strings and small wooden beads. "It's beautiful," Nevia exclaimed, accepting the gift with the same reverence she might show a diplomatic offering from another world. "Look, Talrin, isn't it wonderful?" Talrin knelt beside her, genuinely touched by the child's gesture. "It's excellent craftsmanship," he agreed solemnly. "Thank you, Lina." The parents arrived, flustered and apologetic. "Forgive her boldness, Your Highness." "There's nothing to forgive," Nevia assured them, rising gracefully. "Your daughter has a generous spirit and talented hands." After speaking with the family for several minutes, they continued their tour. Talrin noticed Nevia wearing the simple bracelet alongside her priceless royal jewels, and something shifted inside him, a warmth he hadn't expected to feel. "You didn't have to wear it," he observed quietly. "I wanted to," she replied. "Gifts given with pure intention are the most valuable of all." That evening, as they dined privately in her chambers, a luxury they occasionally allowed themselves after long days, Talrin found himself watching Nevia with new eyes. She had discarded her formal wear for a simpler gown of flowing azure fabric, and her hair, usually arranged in elaborate styles, fell in gentle waves around her shoulders. "You're starring," she noted without looking up from her meal. "I'm trying to reconcile the princess I first met with the woman I've come to know," he admitted. "They seem like different people." Nevia set down her utensils, meeting his gaze. "Perhaps they are. The crown demands certain behaviors, certain sacrifices, but beneath the royal facade is someone who cares deeply about others," Talrin finished for her. "Someone who wears a child's bracelet with pride and kneels in the dust to speak with her subjects as equals." A faint purple blush colored Nevia's cheeks. "And what of you, mercenary? I've seen glimpses of someone beyond the hardened soldier, a man who speaks gently to frightened children and notices details others overlook." Talrin shifted uncomfortably under her perceptive gaze. "War changes you," he said after a moment. "You build walls to survive, to protect what remains of your heart. After a while, the walls become who you are." "And now," she asked softly. Before he could answer, the door burst open. Sorinda rushed in, her lavender complexion flushed with urgency. "Your Highness," she gasped. "A message from Paraxia. Prince Baylor has arrived in our system. He demands an audience to discuss the marriage alliance his father proposed." The warm intimacy of the moment shattered. Reality crashed back upon them both, the reason for their arrangement, the pretense they maintained, the temporary nature of their connection. "How soon?" Nevia asked, her royal mask sliding back into place. "His ship will dock by midday tomorrow," Sorinda replied. "The king has already granted the audience." Nevia nodded, her expression revealing nothing of her inner turmoil. "Then we must be prepared to receive him. Please inform the council." When Sorinda had gone, Talrin moved to stand beside Nevia at the window, where she now gazed out at the twin moons. "This is the moment we've been preparing for," he reminded her gently. "Yes," she agreed, her voice distant. "The purpose of our arrangement." "Are you afraid?" She turned to him, vulnerability briefly visible in her eyes before she concealed it. Not with you beside me. The simple statement affected Talron more deeply than he cared to admit. He had entered this arrangement for money and immunity, expecting nothing more than a temporary inconvenience. He hadn't anticipated how Nevia's quiet strength and compassion would begin to erode the walls around his heart. "I'll be there," he promised, the words carrying a weight he hadn't intended. That night, as he lay awake in his separate, the throne room of Azurelia's royal palace had been designed to intimidate. Soaring columns of luminescent crystal rose to dizzying heights, while the floor, a seamless expanse of polished stone that resembled a frozen ocean, reflected the movement of everyone who crossed it. Massive arched windows cast prismatic light across the chamber, and the twin thrones at its far end stood like sentinels, crafted from rare azure minerals found only in the deepest mines of the planet. It was here that Prince Baylor of Paraxia was granted his audience. Nevia sat regally upon the smaller throne, her father's larger seat conspicuously empty due to his worsening illness. Talron stood at her side, one step behind as protocol dictated, his posture rigid and his emerald features carefully composed into a neutral expression. The royal advisors lined the walls, Counselor Drevis at their center, watching the proceedings with calculating eyes. The announcement came with a flourish of ceremonial instruments. His Royal Highness, Prince Baylor of Paraxia, son of the Crimson Emperor, heir to the Fire Throne. The prince who strode into the hall was not what Talron had expected. Rather than the brutish tyrant Nevia had described, Baylor was strikingly handsome, his crimson skin a rich, deep red that seemed to pulse with inner heat. His movements were graceful, controlled, and his amber eyes gleamed with intelligence as they fixed upon Nevia. "Princess," he greeted, executing a perfect bow. "Your beauty outshines even the legends that have reached our realm. It is an honor to finally stand in your presence." Talron noticed the subtle tightening of Nevia's fingers on the armrests of her throne, a small tell that betrayed her discomfort despite her serene expression. "Prince Baylor," she acknowledged with a nod. "Azurelia welcomes you. I trust your journey was pleasant." "Any journey with the promise of meeting you at its end could only be delightful," Baylor replied smoothly. His gaze shifted to Talron, curiosity mixing with something colder. "Though I admit to some confusion regarding the diplomatic situation. My father's proposal was received with appreciation," Nevia interrupted gently, "but circumstances have changed since its arrival." She extended her hand toward Talron, who stepped forward to take it. "I present Talron of Viridius, my consort and husband." A murmur rippled through the court. This was the first public acknowledgement of their union before a foreign dignitary, a declaration that could not be retracted without grave consequences. Baylor's polished demeanor cracked momentarily, revealing a flash of something dangerous beneath. It vanished so quickly that Talron might have imagined it, were it not for his years of reading opponents in battle. "A husband?" Baylor's voice remained pleasant, though a new edge sharpened his words. "How? Unexpected, and recent, I gather, as news of such a union has not reached Paraxia." "Recent, yes," Nevia confirmed, "but no less binding for its newness." "Of course," Baylor smiled, showing teeth that seemed too white, too perfect. "A love match, I presume? How romantic, the princess and the—" He paused, examining Talron with undisguised assessment. "Soldier, your bearing suggests military training." "Former combat specialist," Talron confirmed, maintaining the agreed-upon narrative. "I served in the Viridian Defense Forces before pursuing independent work." "Fascinating," Baylor mused, though his tone suggested otherwise. "From warrior to consort, quite the elevation. Your Highness must see exceptional qualities in him." "I do," Nevia stated firmly, her gaze unwavering. "But we needn't discuss my personal choices. You've traveled far, Prince Baylor. Please enjoy the hospitality of our kingdom during your stay." It was a dismissal, gracious but unmistakable. Baylor's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly before he bowed again, deeper this time. "Most generous, I look forward to learning more about your remarkable realm and its customs." His gaze lingered on their joined hands. "Perhaps we might still discuss potential alliances between our worlds, even if not through the traditional means my father proposed." "Of course," Nevia agreed. "Counselor Drevis will arrange suitable meetings." When the prince had departed, escorted to his quarters by the royal guard, Talron felt Nevia's hand trembling slightly in his own. "That," she whispered, "was not the reaction I anticipated." "No," Talron agreed, his voice low. He's dangerous, Nevia, more so than you described. She withdrew her hand, composing herself before the court could notice her disquiet. "Walk with me in the celestial gardens," she commanded, loud enough for others to hear. "I wish to show my husband the midnight blooms." Once they were alone amid the bioluminescent flora of the royal gardens, safely out of earshot of the court, Nevia's royal facade crumbled. "Did you see his eyes?" she asked, packing between rows of glowing flowers. "That wasn't disappointment, it was calculation. He's planning something." Talrin leaned against an arched trellis covered in shimmer vines. "He doesn't believe our marriage is real," he stated bluntly. "Or at least, he suspects it's convenient timing." "Which it is," Nevia admitted. "But he can't prove it," Talrin pointed out. "And without proof, he has no grounds to challenge the Union." Nevia stopped packing, turning to face him. "You don't understand Baylor or his father. They don't need proof, only suspicion and opportunity. The Crimson Emperor has conquered 3 systems by exploiting political uncertainties." Talrin moved closer, resisting the urge to touch her arm reassuringly. Their public displays of affection were carefully choreographed. Genuine comfort was not part of their arrangement. "Then we give them no uncertainties to exploit," he said firmly. "We present a united front, a convincing partnership that no one can question." Nevia studied his face, searching for something in his expression. "It's already costing you more than we agreed. This charade was supposed to be simple, appearances at formal functions, nothing more. Now we're facing interplanetary diplomacy and possible conflict." "I knew the risks," Talrin replied, surprising himself with his sincerity. "I'm not abandoning you now." Something shifted in her eyes, gratitude perhaps, or something deeper that neither of them was prepared to name. "Thank you," she said softly, then straightened her shoulders. "We should return before our absence raises questions." The next 3 days brought a flurry of diplomatic meetings and lavish entertainments arranged in Prince Baylor's honor. Talrin remained vigilantly at Nevia's side, playing his role with increasing conviction. They moved together with the ease of a couple truly in love, his hand at the small of her back, her smile brightening when he spoke, small touches and glances that suggested intimate connection. If Baylor noticed the occasional hesitation, the moments where their performance didn't quite align, he gave no indication. Instead, he charmed the court with his wit and knowledge, particularly impressing Counselor Drevis, who seemed increasingly receptive to the prince's suggestions of trade arrangements and cultural exchanges. "He's building alliances within our court," Nevia observed on the 4th night, as she and Talrin prepared for the grand banquet that would mark the midpoint of Baylor's visit. "Drevis now speaks of him with admiration, and 3 of my father's ministers have privately expressed their regret that our marriage prevented a more advantageous union." Talrin adjusted the formal attire that still felt foreign against his skin. "Drevis was never convinced by our story. The others are following his lead." Nevia sighed, allowing her handmaiden to put the finishing touches on her elaborate hairstyle. "My father's deteriorating health makes them anxious. They fear change, seek stability." She met Talrin's gaze in the mirror. "And a mercenary from Viridius doesn't represent stability to them." "While the son of the Crimson Emperor does," Talrin questioned skeptically. "Power recognizes power," she replied simply. "They understand Baylor, even fear him, but they don't understand you, what drives you, what keeps you here." The question hung between them, unspoken but pressing. What did keep him here beyond their original arrangement? Talrin himself wasn't certain anymore. The banquet that evening was an extravagant affair. The palace's grand hall had been transformed into a celestial wonderland, with floating orbs of light drifting among the assembled guests like tiny stars. The finest delicacies from both Azurlia and Paroxia were served on crystalline platters, and musicians played ethereal melodies that seemed to bridge the cultural divide between the 2 worlds. Talrin remained alert despite the festive atmosphere. Something about the evening felt orchestrated, as though events were building toward a conclusion he couldn't yet perceive. Baylor was particularly attentive to Nevia, requesting her presence for conversations about art, literature, and planetary governance, topics that drew her natural passion and animation. "He's isolating her," Talrin murmured to Sorinda, who hovered nearby with refreshments. "Creating